Hey up everybody, my name's Joshua Morrison, director of Johnny Moz's Lessons in Confidence. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the future of humanity and whether it's going to be a good or a bad thing. Because there's a lot of threats to humanity. You know, there's that global doomsday clock, and apparently around now it's about 40 seconds to midnight, and it's all determined by scientists and all the various technologies that go on, and they kind of use their judgment to sort of figure out what's a threat, what isn't, and like how big this threat is compared to this. For the past sort of 80 years or so, since the invention of the atomic bomb, we've been slowly living on thin ice. We've been living on very, very thin ice. I mean, there's been so many incidents where, you know, America's accidentally dropped a nuclear bomb on their own country like 4 or 5 times just because it fell out of a plane, and they haven't found some of these nuclear bombs either. One of them fell quite close to, I think it was Miami or something like that. And if it had gone off, it would have wiped out one of their own cities. So that would have just been pure accident. Then there's the whole thing in Russia. The name of the guy, Stanislav Petrov, that's it. He basically went against the orders that were given to him from upper command to launch the nukes, because they had a system error which found various satellites or debris or something, and interpreted that as a nuclear strike from the Americans, and they needed to strike back. And you know, if you're working for the Soviet Navy, you do not tell your supervisors and your superiors, no, I will not follow this order. And he didn't follow the order, and it turned out that he was very right to do so. And now he is the reason that I'm making this video. He's the reason that you're watching this video. He's the reason that all of us are even still alive. And you know, I'm quite eternally thankful to him for being there to stop this, because if it had been someone else that might have just followed that order and just launched those nukes, you know, I don't know what we would be living in now, whether it would be an apocalypse or whatever. I mean, because the idea of a nuclear apocalypse is quite, you know, scary. You know, the idea that all of this would just disappear, and it, all the leaves would no longer sprout from the trees, all the trees would die. Nuclear winter would engulf a large cloud over the entirety of the globe for 20 years or so, and the radiation, sure, it wouldn't, maybe the radiation wouldn't last for centuries or millennia, but it would at least last for lifetimes. And you know, maybe we would survive a nuclear holocaust. It's not about whether we would go completely extinct or all life on Earth would completely be wiped out, but it would be an extinction level event, in you know, the same way that the dinosaurs got blasted by that comet, or the comet that came before that started off the dinosaurs, or all the various extinction level events, the mass extinction events that have happened throughout Earth's history. This would just be another one, but it would be unique in the fact that it would be one species on this planet has actively caused this. It was caused from an internal thing from this planet, rather than just happenstance where, you know, the planet was in the wrong place at the wrong time and the comet just happened to get lucky, you know? So the future in terms of nuclear Armageddon, you know, I feel like there's 2 ideologies around it. I can't remember the names of them, but one of them is essentially that the fact that we have nuclear weapons has allowed for peace to prosper. And certainly we do live in more peaceful times than we have at various points in human history. You know, notwithstanding the invasion of Ukraine and Palestine, and the M13 rebellions in the Congo, and you know, all the general things that are going on. I'm not saying we live in a perfect world or anything, but we are living in quite a peaceful time comparatively, where wars are nowhere near as destructive as they once were. I mean, after World War II, we had so many systems in place to try and prevent that kind of thing again. We got the Geneva Convention out of it, and we got, you know, all the UN out of it, and we got all these kind of global stopgaps, essentially, safety precautions, essentially, to try and make sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes that were made in World War II, because we can't afford to make those mistakes again. During the Korean War, I can't remember the name of the general. Is it Patton? I think it might be Patton, I can't remember. But he basically wanted to use nuclear weapons in a tactical way to win the Korean War. And you know, at that point, we didn't really fully appreciate the deadly power that came from nuclear weapons. Obviously, we had an idea because, you know, Hiroshima and Nagasaki had happened, and the US and the Soviet Union by that point were both engaging in very frequent nuclear tests. But, you know, say if we had done that, and say we had normalized nuclear strikes in a tactical sense, which I've heard like odd little things about the idea of the Russians and the Ukrainians doing that in the Ukraine war. And then there's this quite dangerous idea that I've heard that, oh, all of Russia's nukes, they're all so old that they probably don't even work. And it's like, listen, I know that Russia turned out to not be quite as strong as it was, as people thought it was, considering that they've had such a hard time invading Ukraine, but that's not to say that they are like completely without power, that they have no nukes. I mean, they have the most nukes in the world, and even if 99% of them are non-functional, that still leaves us with 1% of like 7,000 nukes, which is 70 nukes, which is a lot. That's enough to wipe out basically every major city in Europe. It's enough to cause nuclear winter, because if those missiles were to launch, then you know for a fact that the US and the UK and France would launch their missiles straight back, and that would cause nuclear Armageddon because of the mutually assured destruction thing. And that's why I almost feel a little bit weird about nuclear weapons, because, like, yeah, sure, we want to take them out with us. We don't want to go down without a fight, but we're at that point now where that kind of strike would just wipe out an entire civilization, and there's nothing left to conquer if you were to wipe that civilization out, and there's nothing to do, nothing to gain. And I just feel like it's certainly really interesting, because on the one hand, people like to argue that nuclear weapons are one of the main causes for the current peace and prosperity that we actually have, you know, comparatively compared to wars of the past, because World War I and World War II were taking us down a very dangerous path as far as warfare goes. And if we hadn't invented nuclear weapons, say if we lived in a pre-nuclear world, then, you know, World War III would certainly have happened, and it wouldn't be a nuclear Armageddon. It would just be another world war and we've seen the amount of damage the first two world wars caused, millions of deaths and, you know, genocides and all that kind of fun stuff. And that would have just carried on at the scale it was. I mean, nuclear weapons are the reason that, you know, people are scared to invade certain places. You know, you won't invade a country that's got nukes because they'll just obliterate you. And, like, you know, no one would consider invading NATO, for instance, because, like, then all the NATO would come around and just, like, wipe the fuck out of you. Like, you know, there's so much that you could argue in favor of nuclear weapons as a peacekeeping tool, despite their immense potential for chaos, destruction, death, and suffering. But because they're so new, I mean, nuclear weapons are more recent than my grandparents, you know, and I'm not like old particularly. And, you know, if you're watching this and you're maybe 50, then your parents have a decent chance of being older than the first atomic bomb. And that's how new these weapons of mass destruction are. And that basically means that we don't think long term. We talk about how this might bring peace and prosperity, and like how like the last 80 years have been comparatively peaceful, but the 1800s was relatively peaceful compared to the 1700s, where you had, you know, 7 Years' War, you had the Napoleonic Wars, you had so much stuff, and then that all kind of fizzled out around the 1820s. I'm not saying war stopped or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. Like and colonialism was a massive cause of death and destruction again. So it kind of just changed in style essentially, but there was that gap from, I want to say, like maybe the War of 1812 or the Napoleonic Wars, the last major wars of Europe to World War I, there was that time. And that amount of time is actually longer than the time since the first atomic bomb, which we would consider this new time of peace and prosperity, the most peaceful time in history, as people like to say. And that means that we don't think long term, because that's not even 100 years of time that we have had these weapons, and that's so little time that we've learnt to understand human nature, when human nature and humanity has this power and this ability to just, at a whim, destroy everything, you know? And that is terrifying. I mean, North Korea now has multiple nuclear weapons. Israel is rumored to have nuclear weapons, and I can't even. Pakistan, I think, has nuclear weapons. India, I think, has nuclear weapons. China definitely has nuclear weapons. France has them. Iraq doesn't have them. But you know, there's countries on both, let's call it both sides of the general geopolitical fight for society, essentially. The East and the West, to really boil it down to a basic like primary school level. You know, you've got the people on the West, like America and NATO and all that bullshit, and then you've got the people on the East, which is like as China and like, you know, the Arab world and places like that. And then you've got the second world, I guess, or sorry, the third world, which is like, you know, all the countries that were neutral. And that sort of terminology in itself is kind of outdated, and it kind of implies that these developing countries basically just are irrelevant to the global discourse regarding our future as a civilization, as a human civilization. You know, do we want globalism, or do we want nationalism, or do we want, you know, something in between? Is, you know, global institutions to try and enforce peace and prosperity, are they good, or are they tools for evil? And those are questions that I don't have the answers to. And you know, there was times when I thought I had the answers, but like, I'm just some twat, you know, that like goes around parks and stuff. I don't know. So, and I feel like everyone now sort of, with the access to the internet and stuff, it's very easy to feel like you know a lot more than you do, and to treat that knowledge as if it's got any kind of prowess, when you don't even know if what you're reading is or viewing is actually true, or if it's propagandized, or maybe it is true but it is also propagandized, or if it's just completely made up, or maybe the facts are completely true but they're being presented to you in a way that's designed to manipulate you and your actions, and to make you think in a certain way. Like, it's very easy to get various stats to make someone think, oh, these people are bad because look at these stats. When you know, you could also show some completely different statistics that are both, you know, both of these sets of statistics are true. They're not doctored in any way, but it's the way that you present this information that kind of shows, that, you know, helps manipulate people into thinking about others in certain ways, or thinking about ideas in certain ways. And I feel like with the future, now we don't even have to just worry about nuclear weapons. We have to worry about, one, the internet and, you know, AI on the horizon. And scientists with that global doomsday clock I mentioned earlier, now they agree that that is actually more of a threat than nuclear weapons are in the long term. And like, you know, when nuclear weapons first came out and they destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, like, those nuclear weapons are like sticks of dynamite compared to the bombs that we have now. Like, we have bombs that are thousands of times more powerful than those ones were, which could cause almost infinite destruction. Yeah, so like Tsar Bomba, for instance, was it 56 megatons? And it was actually reduced down from 100 megatons only because its original yield would have, with certainty, killed the pilot of the plane that dropped it, even with all the, you know, time delay measures. Like, they put a parachute on the bomb to make sure it got to its destination much slower, and none of that stuff would have been enough. And even with the yield of 56 megatons, there was still like a 50-50 chance that it would have killed that pilot. Luckily it didn't. So you know, now we have AI, which is already beginning, and I think now we are at the point where, like, say there was an Oppenheimer equivalent for AI, he would have made his "now I have become death" speech by now. You know, and people, like, even the discourse around the idea of AI being a danger to humanity is almost kind of kitsch and an old hat, and just kind of boring and redundant. It's not like the fun thing to do anymore. You know, because at the moment, like, AI is fun stuff like ChatGPT or DALL-E or whatever, these little things that just, you know, make bits of content. And the debate at the moment is around whether this stuff is theft or, you know, it's stealing from the original creators of the work that these AIs were trained on. These AIs were trained on, the entire internet and various parts of the internet. Say an AI was trained on this film, the director of the film maybe has some legal credence to say, well, they don't have legal credence at the moment, but they have maybe some moral credence to say that, you making something with an AI that's basically based off of what I made is stealing my creation and just repurposing it in new packaging. And I don't disagree with that, but I feel like it's not the most important or most interesting conversation, because we are so far at the beginning of AI, and we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We have no idea. Anything could be on the horizon, whether super intelligence, conscious AI is possible, or maybe it becomes something else. Maybe AIs, AIs are already, and bots and stuff are already very prevalent on the internet. And, you see news articles and stuff that are written by AI, and that's been going on for over a decade before ChatGPT and stuff like that. And now it's only become a consumer thing where consumers can actually use it to their advantage, and that's why you've got so many, scammy kind of, use ChatGPT to help your business and grow and all that sort of bullshit, and it's like, shut the fuck up. But, AI, for instance, the thing that really scares me that I remember reading was the idea that you could code a disease on an AI, and I don't know how exactly that works, because I can barely turn on a computer, let alone code a fucking AI to make a disease. But basically, you could craft a disease that is specifically designed to cause as much destruction. Say maybe you could make a disease that only targets specific races, or you could make a disease that only targets people that maybe have a certain bank balance or something like that. So if you wanted to kill all the poor, you could just do that with this disease. And I don't know how exact that would be or how that would be achieved. And I really hope that I never learn how that is potentially possible. But it's all stuff that we need to figure out. We need to answer these questions that we've left unanswered even from the nuclear age. We never bothered to solve the question of whether mutually assured destruction can cause the countries that are taking part in the nuclear arms race to be so scared of their own weapons that they would never consider using them, because it's only been under 100 years since nuclear weapons were first invented, and we have no idea whether they can function in various stages of the human and societal experience, shall we say, where we've gone through a couple ups, dips and valleys of the economy and stuff like that. We had the post-war golden age, and then we had the 70s, which was a bit down, then we had the 80s and 90s and 2000 where it was a bit up, and now it's going down again. And we've had a little bit of that, but we've not had enough time to really see a development in civilization. Society in the 1940s, sure, while it's not exactly the same as it is now, is much more akin to what we have now than, say, the 1940s compared to the 1740s. And, going into the future, society is only going to evolve and progress at a much faster rate. And what that means is that we're going to have to figure out how to juggle these deathly Armageddon-inducing inventions with the speed at which we are evolving technologically. And we're going to have to answer those questions, because if we don't, then we'll learn the answers the hard way, which will involve a significant amount of us dying or living in endless suffering under, say, some kind of robotic apocalypse where the AI robots are the masters and we're their slaves or something like that. I don't know, and I don't pretend to know, but all I can do is try and raise these questions and hope that there's people out there on the internet that know more than me that can maybe use some of this video to raise discussions about the future of humanity, because I feel like humans don't think long term. I saw an article that said government plans to get rid of gas-powered heaters by 2035, and to me 2035 feels like a really long way away, and it's not. It's only like 10 years ago it was 2015 when like Leafy is here and iDubbbz and stuff were knocking about, and 2035 isn't that far away either. 2050 is not really that far away. I mean, 25 years ago, I'm 25 years old, so all you do is double that. And I'm not particularly old. So all you do is double my age and as someone who's not particularly old, and then bam, you're at 2050. 2100 isn't really that far away, all things considered. Someone that's born today will be 75. So it's only one, lifetime away, not even one lifetime away, slightly less than one lifetime away. And how are we going to use these tools for good in the long run? Because they're going to come no matter what. We can't stop technological progression because people have tried that in the past and it doesn't work. So we need to figure out how we are going to use this stuff responsibly, or we are all going to die. So yeah, that's going to be the video. I'm going to end it on a nice positive note there. Thank you very much for watching. Please leave your comments in the description, in the comments thing below, about what you think about the future of humanity. Do you think we're too short-sighted? Do you think that AI or nuclear weapons or maybe something else is the real threat? Do you feel like man's inhumanity to man could be solved by technology? Do you feel like we're generally going in a good direction, even if we have some setbacks? Or do you feel like we are heading towards certain doom? I haven't even mentioned climate change in this video. That's another one. So yeah, Godspeed to the future. And if you're watching this from the future, let me know how the future went. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye. Also, I decided to film here because it does look like an apocalypse around here. Like, apart from that, there's some leaves on that tree. They'll be gone. The water would be a bit like murkier. It's already a bit murky. And those plastic bags would be gone. They'd be blown away by the nuclear blast. It's a tip. There's a fucking license plate that's sat there. YE19RZT. So anyone's car who's crashed into that, leave your comments below trying to claim it back. Yeah, the DVLA will be inspecting this comment section regularly to make sure that you get your car back, because that's clearly an issue. Right, bye-bye.